Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to How to Train Your Gavin. In today's video, I will be reading a series that I never thought I would ever read. I usually do complete series reading vlogs on my channel, mainly for series that I have the highest of interest in reading or an author's back catalogue that I'm interested in reading. For example, Jane Austen. I've always been interested in reading all of Jane Austen's works. And things like Goosebumps, Animorphs, Heartstopper, Pretty Little Liars, things like that, I always have had an interest in reading. So today's series, even when the Netflix series was announced, I wasn't really that interested. But then, because I am a sucker for special editions, I'm a sucker for a beautiful book. This is my Regency romance, okay? As soon as Illumicrate brought out the fact that they were releasing this set and they showed photos of it, oh, it was love at first sight. It was, I fell in love. And then I realised at that moment, yeah, maybe I was never really interested in reading the series. However, I am interested in reading a sexy series. So even if it's just based on the set itself and rather than the actual story, I now want to read this series. What is this series? You will have seen in the thumbnail, so it's not really a surprise. I don't know why I'm drawing this out as if it's going to be a surprise. But that series that you have no idea what it is Bridgerton by Julia Quinn. And yes, this is the sexy, gorgeous, incredible, amazing Illumicrate set that went on sale a good few months back and I managed to get my hands on it. So like, firstly, I just absolutely love, and I can't hold this straight to save my life. What I love about the set is that when they're all together, it does look like you're looking through a sort of gorgeous mansion on the side, almost, all different colours. Oh, when I do this, you can see it better. It's because of the glare. I apologise for that. But yeah, you can see it better when I do it like this. All the edges are sprayed. It looks beautiful. I love a set that when you put them all on their spines, they match beautifully. I will say this is probably my most gorgeous set in this library. So yeah, if this set was never revealed or announced, I don't think I would have ended up getting this series. However, saying that though, I'm not going to be going into this automatically hating it because it's not really typically my thing. I am open-minded, I do read a little bit of everything, and I do know that Bridgerton is a Regency romance, and I do like romance, and every now and then I like Regency. So there's no reason why I shouldn't enjoy Bridgerton. So this is the first book, The Duke and I, and the covers though, the covers. Yeah, so this is the book that I will be starting off with. And then we will be going into The Viscount Who Loved Me. I've heard great things about this one. I think this is a lot of people's favourite in the series. And then we have An Offer from a Gentleman, which... Stop. And we have Romancing Mr. Bridgerton as the fourth book. The colour schemes... Oh, honestly, sexy. To Sir Phillip with Love. Again, very nice. The sixth book, which is When He Was Wicked. Wicked. The penultimate book, which is It's in His Kiss. Does he love me? I wanna know. Is this based off the Cher song? The Shoop Shoop song. Well, now that's in my head. And now I won't be able to look at this title without singing, It's in his kiss, that's where it is. Oh yeah, it's in his kiss, that's where it is. And then the final book, which is On the Way to the Wedding. I do believe there are more books in the overall Bridgerton world, but this, and what I'm reading in this video, is just the main 8 Bridgerton books that I believe were released between 2000 and 2006. So there are spin-offs, but I'm just sticking to the main novels. So I will be starting The Duke and I probably today. And each novel follows a different Bridgerton family member, I believe. And they are part of High London society. And they are each on their mission, their own kind of adventures in finding romance, love, their place in society, I guess. I feel like I will probably end up being a sucker for the series. I do have a soft spot for like trashy stuff every now and then. I don't know if it's actually trashy, but I do want to check out the Netflix show at some point as well. I have heard that's kind of like a bit of a trashy show, very bingeable. And what's not to love, because it's also produced by Shondaland. And, you know, Shonda Rhimes, absolutely love Grey's Anatomy, Scandal, Private Practice. I'm obsessed with those shows. Those are some of my favourite shows of all time. So why have I not checked out Bridgerton yet? I do not know. But I do think the TV show will most likely be very, very different to the book series. So I do want to read the book series first, then go into the TV show. And I think each season is based on a book. So those are the books. That is the plan for this video. But before I get into actually reading these books, I do want to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, which is Serious Readers. This is you before Serious Readers. And this is you after Serious Readers. And now I can see how beautiful you are. For the past 3 months, I have been using my Serious Light from Serious Readers, which I think a lot of you will have already seen if you saw my Haunted Castle vlog, which demonstrated that the Serious Lights have the power to repel ghosts while also supporting all my reading needs. Not only that, but Serious Lights are hand-built in the UK and use daylight wavelength technology, which replicates the daylight spectrum as closely as technically possible. That means reading at night has been less of a strain on my eyes, and I feel like I can read for much longer periods of time. I wouldn't be seen reading without my Serious Light. The scandal. As you know, I challenge myself all the time to do vlogs like this, and reading Bridgerton specifically for this video was made that much more of a pleasurable experience by having my Serious Light. Yes, this is me from the future. I've read all the Bridgerton books. I have so many thoughts. I cannot wait to tell you all about them. But back on topic though, there are lots of things to digest while reading a book, and it helps so much to take all of it in when I have good lighting. If I don't have good lighting when I read, then I can't process all the things that the book's trying to tell me. So when I have a light like the Serious Light, then I am able to give you videos like this. I'm able to analyze and dissect all the books that I want to talk about. And I don't know about you, but it's really hard to do that, or at least to take a book in with really bad lighting. My Serious Light has been revolutionary for me to be able to read in my library room and be able to give you guys all of my thoughts and opinions on the books that I read. So I would highly recommend checking out the website, which I have a link for down in the description box. If you use the offer code GAVIN15 when checking out, with any purchase of a product in the Serious Lights range, you will get a compact light which is worth £150. Absolutely free. My offer code also offers international shipping. Ooh, stunning. So if you were unsure about getting one and you lived outside the UK, you will absolutely be able to take advantage of this offer too. So be sure to check out the Serious Readers website and start reading your books the way you are always meant to. A huge thank you again to Serious Readers for sponsoring this video. And now let's get back to our regular programming. And now without further ado, let's get our romance on and check out what all the fuss is about with Bridgerton. Okay, question. Is it morally acceptable to annotate these editions? Even though I have highlighters that will match the colour of each book. And pens as well, actually. I have pens that could also match. Is it morally acceptable to do that though? Considering how much the set was. I mean, I'm never going to resell these books. I'm never going to sell them on. These are mine forever. These are staying in my library forever. Even if I don't like the books, I'm keeping them. So, like, I don't care if I annotate them and then have to sell it on, because that's not going to happen. But should I do it? There's part of me that's like, I shouldn't, because of how, well, rare these are and how beautiful they are, how much they cost. Do I put pen to paper? That's the question. Do I do that? I don't usually annotate, but when it's a video like this, I'll want to, because I'm going to go into spoilers, I'm going to go into characters, I'm going to go into what I love, what I hate, and in order to do that, I feel like I have to annotate. I feel like I've convinced myself, and I feel like this is going to probably be a little heartbreaking for some of you guys to watch as I do this, but I think I will have to highlight. I don't ever really like write anything, I just highlight. I never say anything else on the page. But that's what's going to happen. So I'm just giving you ample warning that I'm probably going to do that. Most likely 100%. What a morning I've had already. I know I look like shit, but just please ignore. I was going to film this last night when I looked less like shit, when I actually finished The Duke and I. But I just couldn't. And then I thought, oh, it'll all be good tomorrow morning. Everything will be fine. My cats are driving me wild. They'll probably make an appearance soon. But they smashed something in this room. And that was like a little bit of a breaking point for me, not gonna lie. I was just standing there looking at the smashed thing thinking, wow, this smashed thing is a metaphor for my life. I mean, totally unrelated to Bridgerton and in this entire vlog, but I just thought I would give some context as to why I look like this. I'm just not ready. You know, I'm not ready for the day. I've still in my pajamas. This is only my second cup of coffee, and I'm kind of done already. I'm done with the month. I'm done with the month. That's what I'm gonna say. Right, okay, let's talk about the Duke and I, because, right, I was really enjoying this to begin with. I really was. I swear. I thought the introduction of the characters was fantastic. I thought this was like so easily readable and bingeable, and I was just chapter after chapter just flicking through it and just like consuming it and thinking I'm probably not going to stop. And I did end up reading this all pretty much in one sitting yesterday. I mean, I did do other things in between, but you know, it was pretty much a one sitting and done kind of deal. Didn't take overtly long to read. Okay, let's start off at the very beginning. I should probably tell you what each of these books are about when we go into them. So with the Duke and I, we follow Daphne. She is the fourth child of the Bridgerton family, and it's really easy to remember as well because they're each like in alphabetical order. So the oldest is Anthony, Daphne is the fourth oldest, you know, things like that. That does make it easy for me, especially since there are like quite a few side characters that I haven't quite grasped their names just yet. But when it comes to the actual main characters, I kind of have a grasp on them, I would say. So this one is Daphne's story, Daphne and Simon. What I loved about this is that we started off with a bit of a prologue with like some kind of flashback in the past to Simon's childhood. So I was like, oh, okay, so we're actually starting off with developing the love interest. Because usually when we get a romance, or at least the ones I've read, we get the main character and then we discover the love interest and then we learn more about them. With this one, we had Simon's backstory, we had his childhood, and I felt so bad for him because Simon, he wouldn't speak for the first, I think it was 4 years of his life, and his father kind of disowns him. He disowns him. He doesn't mind anything to do with them because he thinks his child is broken, and so Simon's nanny ends up looking after him and gets him to speak, and he learns to speak, and he does have a stutter that he tries to control, but it's the one thing like that he feels about himself that gives him a lot of like self-conscious doubt, or like self-doubt, I guess, and it really makes him vulnerable. And I really enjoyed exploring the complexities of the love interest first before getting into our main character Daphne. So honestly, at this point I was just like, oh, okay, like this is like a great introduction, and then we do get introduced to Daphne and her mother Violet, and I get like a little bit of Downton Abbey vibes, and let's be honest, Bridgerton is a little bit of a Poundland Jane Austen. This isn't amazing literature by any means. Honestly, I just read all of Jane Austen's books a few months back and really loved them. I thought they were fantastically written, and I was so surprised at how much I enjoyed the classics. But with this, I mean, I was enjoying it for a different reason. This was just entertainment. I had no idea that there was this whole like Lady Whistledown thing going on. Like, she is like this gossip columnist sort of person, and it's actually, I think it's published in like this newspaper that circulates high society London, and yeah, Lady Whistledown like knows things. She's literally Gossip Girl. She is XOXO Go Piss Girl, and I have no idea who the fuck she is. I have no idea who she is. Who is she? I'm trying my best to avoid spoilers. I really am. I'm trying my best to avoid spoilers online, because I'm sure like this series was written or like published over 20 years ago, and the Netflix show is out, so I'm sure there's lots of people who do know. I'm avoiding it like the plague. I'm not going on any video reviews. I'm not even searching on Google. The amount of times like I've held myself back from looking up other people's opinions on this book is insane. Like, I want to know what other people think of this, but at the same time, I don't want to be spoiled for anything, because I have no idea who Lady Whistledown is. And I didn't even know that this was a thing in Bridgerton. To be honest, I went into Bridgerton not knowing a whole lot at all anyway. Like, I had no idea that the whole romance between Daphne and Simon would be a sort of a, what do you call it? I don't really read a lot of romance. It's like the fake romance thing, the fake romance trope or whatever, when they pretend, or fake dating. That's it, the fake dating. That's what it is. They do this whole kind of deal with each other that they're going to pretend to date so that Daphne can shake her mum off a bit because her mum is very intense on getting her married. And so like she has like a little bit more freedom. And Simon wants all of the single ladies of this society and their mothers to leave him alone as well. So they agree to do it so that they can be free of the obligations of society, essentially. And I had no idea like that was a thing. I didn't realise Bridgerton was like fake dating. Like this is like, you have to kind of suspend your disbelief a little bit with this because it's not, I wouldn't say it was historically accurate, and I'm not even an expert, but I know this is not historically accurate. Like, I just feel like a lot of the things that happens in The Duke and I, you just wouldn't get away with in a classic, in a authentic Regency romance, I would imagine. But again, I'm not an expert, I know nothing, so don't take my word for anything. But yeah, that whole thing, like even when Daphne and Simon got introduced to one another, I loved it. Honestly, I thought they had fantastic chemistry. I thought they got on so flammably well, if that's the right word, because they just bounced off one another. The dialogue was quick and witty, and I did not annotate this. I was about to highlight a section at the start, then I was like, do I really need to highlight? I don't think I do, so I didn't touch this. I didn't touch it, and I'm not going to touch any of them. I talked myself out of it, and I know I can do, because these are my copies, I can do whatever I want with them, but at the end of the day, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. One day I might when I'm brave enough, but today's not that day. So Daphne and Simon, yeah, they just get on so well. And Simon, it's a little bit complex as well because he's best friends with Anthony, who is the oldest Bridgerton sibling. And Daphne, like, she is, to begin with, like such a smart and witty heroine. Like, I feel like she could have been on par with like Jane Austen heroines, for example, in terms of agency, in terms of having quick wit. And I thought the world of Daphne, quite honestly, for half of this book. And then something happened, and I feel like a lot of people will know exactly what I mean. And this book went from being such a fun, entertaining ride to, honestly, I think a 2-star book. I was going to give this 4 stars. I was going to give this 4 stars for the majority of this book. And then I feel like by the midpoint, up until like the last quarter, things started happening and I was just like, no, this is not the way. And I felt like the last quarter of this book almost felt like a totally different novel to the start of it, especially in terms of the characters. Like, I feel like maybe as soon as Simon and Daphne did end up starting to fall in love with one another and they get married, like, that was quick, but at the same time I could understand why, because of societal pressure, especially since they were caught kissing and Daphne's boob or tit or whatever was like pretty much out. Yeah, they had to get married, and I think from that moment on it just felt, I don't know, maybe a lot of the tension just deflated then. I probably would have loved it if there was a bit more that was drawn out before we got to that part. Maybe if there was a bit more steaminess and sex. There is a little bit of sex in this, not a great deal, so I wouldn't have said it was very steamy. I have heard that there was a lot of sex in the TV show, so the TV show definitely took a lot of liberties there. But I feel like what I loved most about the relationship though was just the dialogue between them, honestly. I feel like the physical connection, I wasn't exactly taken with. It was all told in dialogue that I personally loved until we get to a certain point. So around about like chapter 13, I think it was, we have the talk with the mother, Violet, before the wedding about a wife's obligations to a man and to their man and what is expected of them in the bedroom. And this is when like Daphne becomes a blithering idiot. Fair enough, like she's kind of been shielded from sex and that kind of talk, but considering she, even just her whole personality, I feel like my cats are like fighting. Let them be. Her personality to begin with is like she knows loads of things from experience from like her brothers, and like she's very attentive. She can see the world around her and she makes her own decisions in her own opinions of things, and that's fantastic. But as soon as it gets to like chapter 13 and she doesn't know anything about sex and romance and what's like expected of her and that whole thing, like even for the rest of the book she becomes a different character. Like she doesn't know how to tie her own shoelaces. Well, not really, but like, you know what I mean? Like she becomes like such a quick-witted character to somebody who has like no self-awareness. And I found that character shift so jarring that I stopped caring too much about Daphne, and I was focusing more on like, oh, but I still like Simon because he's kind of kept his character, and you know, he has a lot of childhood trauma from his father, and you could feel that through his characterization. And then the thing happened. I think it was chapter 18, where, okay, this is a story. Leading up to this point, Simon has told Daphne that he can't have children, and she misinterpreted that as in he's impotent, like he can't have kids, as in like he literally can't, when is in truth, in reality, he just doesn't want to. So like she gets her wires crossed, and I can see why, because Simon does word things in a very like clear-cut way. Like it was manipulative. It was a little bit manipulative, not gonna lie. Like it wasn't like, this is when I started to say the relationship is like not very good. But all Daphne wants is a large family. Like, you know, the fact that she has 7 siblings, like she wants a large family, and Simon can't give that to her. So like there's this whole tension throughout the book about like, oh, I don't want to marry Daphne because I'll never be able to give her what she wants. But it turns from a question of the fact that he can't do it to that he just won't do it. But then we get to the certain point, it comes to a head where Daphne, like, she's a bit pissed off with him, like, for him lying, and she, well, one night he comes in drunk, and she takes advantage of that, and I can't even chalk it up to her innocence in the whole sex department, because what she does is very malicious. Like, she does it with intent, where she knows that it's not what he wants, and it's this whole, I don't even want to read it out. Like, she gives a look, it's so hard to talk about, actually. Like, she does, and I'm going to use the actual word, like, trigger warnings for rape, but, like, she does rape him. As soon as he says no and tells her to stop because he's about to ejaculate, he doesn't want to get her pregnant, he does not want a child. She, who is on top of him in his intoxicated state, is able to keep him pinned down so that he does finish inside her. And then she deliberately, I feel like this is something that was done to keep the sperm to go in a certain direction. She like lifts her legs up and things, and she keeps the sperm inside. Like it's awful. It's awful. Like, she does it with so much malicious intent that it isn't even an innocent thing. You can't even chalk it up to her being unaware of like what she did. She knew what she did. Like, there's no grey area there. She did it deliberately. And that's the moment where you stop rooting for Daphne. It's hard because she was such a great character to begin with. Honestly, I thought genuinely, to begin with, she was such a great character. And then she does that and it's unforgivable. Like, he lied to you, yes. Talk about it. Talk about it. Don't do what you just did. Where did her self-awareness, where did her wit go? It just left her completely. I feel like that talk with her mother, which was so funny, by the way. It was hilarious when Daphne was like, oh, so you've had sex 8 times? And Berit's like all red and embarrassed, like, no, I've done it more than 8 times. You know, like, that whole thing was hilarious. Like, great. Chalk that all up to a punchline in that chapter and have Daphne's innocence where it comes to sex be something that's funny in that moment. But then, obviously, after that, she's having sex with her husband. Don't go that route. I can't comprehend why we did that. If it had been discussed about better afterwards as well, maybe it would have been a moralistic moment, not just for Daphne, but for the audience who are reading this. But the fact that, like, I don't even think it was well handled either after the fact, because then Simon leaves for 2 months and tells her, don't get in contact with me unless you're pregnant, and she says, hey, I'm pregnant. He comes back and then she's like, actually, I'm not pregnant. And he says that he didn't leave because she raped him. He left because she reduced him to being a child where he would stutter. So like, he blamed his own insecurity and his own stutter as a reason for leaving, not the actual act, not the actual thing that he should have left for, because what she did was totally wrong. So at the end of the day, this book says about that whole situation is that it's actually okay. It does, because Simon doesn't blame Daphne for what she did. There's no kind of question about it. He left because he felt like a child again. But yeah, because of what she just did. But because the author doesn't even explain that the whole rape thing was wrong, it's very dubious. It's it didn't sit well with me. It really didn't sit well with me. There was no good conversation that came out of it. If there was a good conversation that came out of this regarding that scene, then fair enough. Sometimes it is, like, I don't automatically write off a book when it has something heavy hitting in it. I really don't. If it can bring that theme or that topic or that event across in an authentic way and then have some kind of commentary on that to show that it's not endorsed or glorified, then have those conversations. Include that in your book. But then when it's done in a way as it's done in The Duke and I, and you can absolutely disagree with this, that's absolutely fine. It just feels like, nothing's going to be addressed with that, even in the future. I feel like if it was going to be addressed, it would have been addressed in this, and it wasn't. I'm a bit perplexed by that. But yeah, I feel like that's all I can say on that matter. It didn't sit well with me, and I kind of knew it was coming because I have heard people mention this in the past in passing, and I did know that there was going to be a really controversial scene in that, but I was hoping the book would actually handle it well and have something to say about it, but it didn't, and all it did was destroy the characters, honestly. It destroyed Daphne as a character. I just feel like there's no coming back from that. That's my opinion. So yeah, I already mentioned I'm giving this 2 stars. I really did want to give it more, and I'm not gonna go into the rest of them hating them. Honestly, I feel like this would have been a 4-star for the majority of this book, and then it just all went a bit haywire. But yeah, I'm really excited for the next book, actually, The Viscount Who Loved Me. This one, I've heard, is a lot of people's favourites. This one, I believe season 2 of the show is based on, and I've heard a lot of people say season 2 is better than season 1. I have high hopes for this, and as long as there's no really controversial scene like there was in the first book, then I might be okay with this book, and it most likely will get a higher rating, but we are just going to have to wait and see. Anything could happen. And I hope we find out who Whistledown is in this book as well. Honestly, this is a bigger mystery than A in Pretty Little Liars. But thank God, I much preferred this over the first one. If this had been just as bad as the first one, I probably would have called it quits on this vlog, because I've not forced myself to read 8 bad books. Okay? I'm not 100% sold on this series. I mean, I do like this one, I do like it, but I definitely feel like we get a lot of repetitive tropes, a lot of repetitive even plot points in this book, with the Duke and I also being a sort of moulding framework for it. And I don't want to read 6 more books exactly like that. So hopefully things change up. If you keep hearing whistling, it's because it's really windy right now, and the windows whistle whenever it is windy. So bear that in mind. If you hear anything strange, it's that. It ain't coming out my ass, I promise. So the Viscount Who Loved Me, we follow Anthony. And Anthony from the first book, I wasn't 100% sold on Anthony in the first book. I liked him as a character, but he was very, what's the word? He was a bit of a cock blocker, okay, in the first one. He was an overbearing older brother, and his actions in the first one, while sometimes I would be like, yes, absolutely do that, and other times I was just like, why are you getting so involved? Why are you so high strung? And I totally get it. It's because he was the older brother of Daphne, and his friend Simon wanted to get into her pants, basically. So obviously there is that kind of element to it, but he did come across as a little bit too forceful in the first one, and he does still retain that personality in this book too, but I do much prefer him in this book, and I probably prefer him to Daphne as a main character, and I prefer him over Simon as a love interest for our main character as well. He just has a lot of personality. I really loved that we got, again, backstory to Anthony at the start of this, like we did with Simon in the first book. With Anthony, it was more to do with his father, or at least the patriarch of the Bridgerton family, and how he died. He died via a bee sting, which came out of nowhere, and it left everyone devastated, especially Anthony. He was so confused, but it meant that he had this, like, huge fear of bees, but also he knew that he would die young because he did not want to surpass his father in age. And I believe his father died at like 38 or something. So yeah, we start off like pretty well again with the writing, with the setup. I think the setup was done pretty well. Did you hear that? So Anthony's love interest is Kate, although he is, well, at the start of the book, he has his sights set on Edwina, who is Kate's younger half-sister, and Kate hates him. This is true enemies to lovers, because Kate does not like him. She hears about him through Lady Whistledown, and she has these opinions on him because he's a rake, which is like a wealthy man who kind of... this is how I feel like it is. I don't actually know 100% what a rake actually is, but it's Anthony. Like, he is a wealthy guy, and now I've got Ash. I've got noises coming from left and right. Like, I don't know what to do. Ash, are you okay? There was a bit of an explanation for a rake in the first chapter, I believe, from Lady Whistledown herself. A rake is youthful and immature. He flaunts his exploits, behaves with utmost idiocy, and thinks himself dangerous to women. Hi Ash, I love you. Oh, a rake, uppercase, knows he is dangerous to women. He doesn't flaunt his exploits because he doesn't need to. And Anthony is an uppercase rake. So Kate automatically just does not like him. And I really like Kate as a main character, and she never does anything to make me get pissed off or give her character a full 180 by the end, like Daphne, for instance. Kate, throughout the entire book, is solid. She is a solid character, very, very likeable. Anthony as well, I feel like Anthony goes on quite a journey and he changes quite a bit. He definitely seems less likeable to begin with, and then when you start to break down the foundations of Anthony, you really do start to get more of an insight into him, and he becomes a lot more likeable. And I did start falling in love with him like Kate did. Like, Kate was so resistant, she did not want anything to do with him, but then she slowly started to see a different side to him, and it was so sweet to see, it was so beautiful to see. I felt like their relationship was a lot more organic, I guess, than Daphne and Simon, although I would still say that I really did enjoy the build-up of Daphne and Simon's relationship, and I loved that they did the whole fake dating thing. And then we do actually, a copy and paste from the first book, we get an incident between Kate and Anthony where they are caught in a compromising position and they are forced to marry. Like, they have to marry in order to stop scandal from happening. And the exact same thing happened in the first book with Daphne and Simon. So we had, you know, the backstory at the start with the male love interest, and then we have this inciting moment, this compromising moment that forces the main characters to get married. So I see that pattern there. And there's a lot of misunderstandings as well, which happened in the first one. Misunderstandings is my least favourite romance trope, or just a trope in general. I just don't like unnecessary misunderstandings. And this was like filled with it, especially because, you know, Kate, she sees herself a certain way. In Anthony, he is too proud sometimes to be honest, and it just makes for some unnecessary drama sometimes. Saying that though, I still really enjoyed it. It was really sweet to see Anthony's more caring side come out. So Kate, she is terrified of like thunderstorms, or I think storms in general, and Anthony cares for her when that happens, and he's just there for her. Like, he really does show this other side. And there was another amazing moment as well, probably one of my favourite moments of the book, is a little early on where Kate has to walk her dog and Anthony accompanies her, and this is before any kind of romance blossoms between them, and Anthony is on his way to see Edwina, so he accompanies Kate, and they get in a little bit of a muddle up, and the dog runs away and Anthony tries to run after it, and it leads to like some like funny moments, and just the whole scene in my head. I was playing 101 Dalmatians in my head, honestly, and it was great. I love that. I love how kind of almost cheeky some of the dialogue is, and I think Julia Quinn does a really good job at dialogue between characters. So I just found it really fun again, and I was definitely more engaged throughout. Oh gosh, Toby gave me a fright. And he's just gone. Like, did he just come up here to give me a fright? I do not know. Honestly, everything is out to get me in this update. But yeah, great, but I genuinely did really enjoy this book. I really did. It wasn't amazing. It genuinely wasn't amazing, but like, I would probably give it like 4 stars. It was an improvement over The Duke and I, which I would have given 4 stars had it not been for a particular scene in the whole like last quarter of that book. But this one, it felt like a more cohesive story. It felt more of a genuine romance throughout. Not just the first half, but like throughout. And seeing the enemies to lovers, oh, chef's bloody kiss. I loved it. So yeah, Anthony and Kate are so far my favourite couple, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what the next Bridgerton sibling brings me. So that means I will be starting An Offer from a Gentleman. I have no idea actually what to expect from this one. And I believe the Netflix show has skipped this one for season 3 and they're doing book 4 for season 3 instead of this one. And I'm curious as to why. Is this one not good? Like, I need to find out, like, ASAP. When the wind calms down, let's start our book. Although I guess it is good ambience, isn't it? But at the same time, I'm a little bit like Kate and I'm a little bit scared of it because sometimes it sounds like the window's going to come through. Let's see if I actually do manage to read An Offer from a Gentleman without an incident. And if there is, bring me a Bridgerton man to comfort me, please. I barely got any sleep last night. That wind was insane. It did mean that I made a good chunk of progress in book 4. I just couldn't be bothered to go on camera and give my review of book 3. But I will tell you about book 4 later. At the minute, An Offer from a Gentleman. This is the latest Bridgerton book that I finished, and I didn't like it. I had no idea that this was going to be a bit of a Cinderella retelling, and let me tell you, I am not the biggest fan of Cinderella retellings. I'm not really a big fan of the Cinderella story all that much because it's been done to death. I do love the Cinderella story every now and then, you know. I do love a Cinderella story starring Hilary Duff and Chad Michael Murray, for instance. But when I start to see, I found it hard to say the characters as like fleshed out characters because they had worked into this framework at the start of this book where I just couldn't have cared less. It genuinely felt like this was ripped out of like a Cinderella fairy tale generic beginning. And so we do follow Sophie. She is in the care of her stepmother, her wicked stepmother, and stepsisters. She is being forced to work and she isn't allowed at the masquerade ball. In things like that. It just, I see that and I can't see Sophie as an actual character. I genuinely can't. And I couldn't really see her as a character throughout either because I don't think she had the depth or the breadth of Daphne or Kate. So she already paled in comparison. And I did feel some sympathy for her to begin with. Honestly, I did. And it's hard not to when she is essentially abused by her stepmother who doesn't love her and all of that. But at the same time, I just like, all I can say is Cinderella. All I can say is Cinderella. I found it quite a bit of a lazy tactic to bring, I don't know, a different depth to Sophie. I just found it lazy. I found it lazy, honestly. This is book 3 of a Regency romance series. We do not need to retell fairy tales to tell this story because we've already established the characters, the Bridgertons, for instance. Oh yeah, this one follows Benedict, by the way. We already like have that kind of part of it. So why are we retelling fairy tales? It doesn't fit. If you're going to do that, do it with all of the books. Do it with the first book and branch from there. But it just felt so jarring coming into this and it being a Cinderella retelling. I didn't like that. But anyway, yeah, Sophie does end up going to the ball and she meets Benedict, and because it's masquerade, nobody really knows who's who. Well, unless you're a Bridgerton, people know who's a Bridgerton. But yeah, Sophie and Benedict hit it off, and then Sophie has to leave, and she leaves behind a glove, and Benedict wants to find her. So it's 2 years later, Sophie's being kicked out by her stepmother because she finds out that she actually went to the ball. And yeah, Benedict is like looking for this mystery woman. I didn't like the plot. I really didn't like the plot of this. And because of that, it meant that the romance didn't come across as genuine either. Therefore, I didn't care about the romance between Sophie and Benedict. Anyway, Benedict makes this so unbearable as well because he does end up coming across Sophie. He does kind of like save her from an almost sexual assault, and that was all fine and well. Honestly, I was like, okay, brilliant. Benedict is being an absolute gem right now, and that's very admirable, and he gets Sophie away from that situation and gets her a job with his mother, essentially. So like, that's all fine and well and stuff, and then he just starts treating her like absolute shit. Absolute shit. Like, he wants her to be his mistress, even though he's looking for this masquerade mystery woman, who, by the way, you're spending 2 years looking for this woman. Not a whole lot really happened between you at this ball anyway. Not enough to stand out and be worth the effort of finding for 2 years. Seriously. I mean, it was kind of sweet, the moment between them at the ball, but that's all it was. It was just sweet. There was nothing standout, nothing memorable. She didn't give him the best blowjob of his life. Like, why are you spending so much time and energy in this matter? I just don't understand that. It's the same with the actual Cinderella fairy tale as well. I'm just like, oh my god, you dance with her for like a little bit and then you're spending all that money or whatever and all that time and effort trying to find her based on her shoe size. And there's just a huge part of the Cinderella story that really bugs me, and that part is kind of prevalent in this. Although he isn't really like fitting the glove on every woman, you know, trying to find out which one it is, but you know, there is still that element of him looking for her for such a long time, even though nothing really stood out. Come on. Come on. This book did nothing to portray Sophie in a way that really does make her stand out from anyone else. And I just felt sorry for Sophie for most of it, because most of this, she is pretty much a victim. She's a victim to her stepmother. She's a victim to Benedict as well, because he is just so rude, and the things he comes out with just made me want Sophie to get away from him even more. And then when Benedict finally does find out about Sophie as well, he's so angry. Even though she is the one he's been looking for this entire time, but he's angry. But like, dude, you should have recognized this ages ago. You know, if she made that much of an impression on you, you should have spotted her from a mile away. The only way that he realizes it's her is when she's blindfolded. And I'm just like, but that's still her face. Like, all you've done is like cover her eyes. What? Like, what? I don't understand all that. There was just so many like plot holes in that regard. But like and a lot of the men in the Bridgerton series do this, is that they take out their hurt pride on the women around them, like usually on their love interest. And I found Benedict to have been like the worst culprit of that. He just treats Sophie like absolute garbage. I just didn't find it romantic. I didn't find them enjoyable. And yeah, I just don't really think there was like a whole lot to enjoy in this book. I still like Lady Whistledown's kind of, you know, commentary as well. I still enjoy that aspect of the Bridgerton series. But An Offer from a Gentleman, my least favourite so far, I would think. I'm going to give this one 1.5. I personally didn't find it fun, but I'm sure other people who maybe aren't that bothered by the Cinderella retelling will be fine with it. It's just because I do not like Cinderella retellings anymore. I've read too many of them, and I know this came out in like 2001 or something like that. And that's fair enough, but still, I'm done. I'm bored. There's just nothing else I really want to talk about it. I was reading this quite fast because I was just, not exactly skimming, but I was just reading fast. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. I just didn't want to bother with it, in all honesty, but I saw it all the way through, and yeah, it was not even fine. I thought this one was a bad one. Mainly because you just couldn't really root for the main characters, and I just find the retelling aspect of it quite lazy. So yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if that hurts you. I also feel like because I really enjoyed the Viscount Who Loved Me so much, I came into this with higher expectations than the Duke and I, and unfortunately could not meet those expectations. But I still stand by what I've said, and I still think my main problem with it is Cinderella retelling, Benedict's a C-U-N-T, Sophie isn't as great a heroine as Daphne or Kate. And I'm saying Daphne as in the first half of the Duke and I Daphne, not the latter part. Yeah, so there we go. Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, the 4th book in the series, so we are halfway through now. Well, when I've read this, we're halfway through. So I hope this is a major improvement to An Offer from a Gentleman. Please, just be a little bit better. That's all I want. But I can tell that I need a haircut because the side of my hair just goes everywhere. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. I've just had a tea as well because I haven't wanted to film all day. Even after I finished the book, I just didn't want to film. But by gods, I will. I will. For Penelope's sake, because, well, Penelope and Colin, this was their love story, Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. This was the story of Colin, the 3rd oldest, and Penelope Featherington, who we know and love from the previous books. She is somebody who has been very looked down upon, especially by her own mother. Like, that was very interesting to read about, especially to see how she was deemed in society, and especially after the revelations of this book. Like, the one big question that we all had on our lips was, who the fuck is Lady Whistledown? I mean, we had some curveballs thrown our way in this book. I thought I was reading Pretty Little Liars again. I genuinely did. I was like, there's so many red herrings, so many clues, so many different people it could have been. For a while, I thought it might be Lady Danbury. And there was even a moment between Penelope and Lady Danbury where they were kind of accusing one another. In a really good way, though. I really like the dynamic and the like friendship between Lady Danbury and Penelope, actually. They really do go hand in hand together. Even though Lady Danbury is like a bit of a busybody, Penelope is also somebody who you might not kind of get a full sense of at first impression. She's definitely somebody who I feel blossomed in this book. She's always been one of my favourite side characters. In this one, she definitely came out of her shell in quite big ways. And it was kind of hard to begin this book because she was very self-deprecating. She took a lot of the feedback that everybody else gave her on board, even when they were just being nasty rather than, you know, critical or like in a constructively critical way. Yeah, she would just be very self-deprecating. And it was tough to read about because I find it difficult sometimes to read a book where a character is constantly berating themselves or putting themselves down. Like, I feel so awful about it. And that is exactly what Penelope was doing. But fortunately, I feel like one of the reasons why I really like this romance in this book compared to like the other romances, especially in book 3, oh my god, definitely better than book 3, by the way. And definitely better than book 1 as well, I think. But the relationship in this really helped to reinform the Penelope character rather than take away her shine. So like, say Daphne, honestly, I have so much beef with Daphne, like I'm not letting it go. With Daphne, I felt like she became a different character after the romance. Kate was just a queen throughout. Sophie, well, that was her name in the previous book, wasn't it? I've already forgotten the name of the character from the previous book because she was so forgettable, in my opinion. Didn't really care much for, especially with the romance. But in this one with Penelope and Colin, I felt like both of them really went hand in hand with one another. And instead of both of the characters kind of falling from their personalities as soon as they got together, they were actually more enlightened, I guess. And I was just really happy for Colin and Penelope. I will say, Colin, I never really talk about the other Bridgerton siblings during other sibling-centric books because I don't really form that much of an opinion of them beforehand. But I would say, like, I had a different opinion on Colin definitely from the previous books. He seemed a lot more fun and carefree. And in this one, he definitely came across as more of an ass. And one of the things that I have to try and take on board is that every single male character in the Bridgerton series comes across as an ass more times than not. They really do. They do so many different things. Their temper, they all seem to have very short tempers and they get angry for the silliest of reasons sometimes. And Colin is no different. I will say though that I still really like Colin and I thought those moments didn't detract from his overall character. And I was still rooting for Penelope and Colin by the end of it. It was so cute. As one thing I would say about the romance in this is that it was just cute and rather wholesome. Like, Penelope has had the biggest crush on Colin for as long as she can remember. And she is friends with Eloise, who is the fifth eldest Bridgerton. She's really good friends with Penelope, and so Penelope is falling in love with her brother Colin, and it was really cute to see him also start to realise that he has feelings for Penelope. And I feel like a lot of characters do feel sympathy for Penelope, especially the way she's treated, especially with how her mother treats her as well. Like, her mother's not as bad as the stepmother from the previous book, but like, you can tell she didn't have that much respect for Penelope. But we do have some good moments with Colin later on as well. Giving Mrs. Hetherington a what for. Oh, Hetherington, no, that's my name. Giving Mrs. Featherington a what for. One thing I love about the Featheringtons is that it's just so close to my last name, which is Hetherington. It's so good. Although I don't have an A in my surname. Everyone always puts an A. People spell my name Featherington but with an H instead of an F, but it's Hetherington, Hetherington. But I do get the A put in there all the time. So that's where me and the Featheringtons differ. But I just think that was just a really random thing for me to bring up. But anyway, I went off on a tangent again, didn't I? So yeah, the romance and things was quite sweet and quite nice. They did have their ups and downs. This is a moment I loved and hated. So Penelope ends up reading one of Colin's journals, and he does a lot of writing, and she really encourages that part of him. But he catches her reading the journals without his permission, which of course like is a bad thing. You should never do that. But he does get angry and he cuts himself, and Penelope has to like try and stop the bleeding. And it was quite sweet as well, because like he realised in that moment as well how much he liked Penelope. Even though he was angry with her, he didn't want the bleeding to stop, because that would mean Penelope would have to stop. And I feel like that was just like rather sweet. It was rather sweet. Like, he shouldn't have lost his temper, but at the same time, like, he doesn't hurt her or anything like that. He just every single guy in this bloody series has a short temper, so I can't criticize all of them for the exact same things. But that was a really sweet moment, and I just absolutely love the fact that Penelope was so encouraging of his writing. And even afterwards as well, like further on in the relationship, when Colin realizes that Penelope's also a writer and that she can help him, and they have like this actual mutual thing going on. It's just so nice and so wholesome. The main thing with this book that I really enjoyed as well is the whole Lady Whistledown thing, because she does get unmasked, and yes, that's right, I said she. It wasn't the most dramatic of ways that it was revealed. I probably would have thought it was more dramatic if it had been revealed in front of everyone, and that didn't happen. Colin ends up following Penelope because he wanted to apologise to her for something, and he sees her put this letter thing behind a prayer book, and he comes across it, he opens it, reads it, even though she tells him not to, and that's how we find out that she is Lady Whistledown. Even though we had Cressida, who I fucking hate, she is a bitch. She said earlier on that she was Lady Whistledown because Lady Danbury was offering a reward for anybody who can unmask Lady Whistledown, and so Cressida's like, I'm Lady Whistledown, and Lady Danbury's like, give me proof. But yeah, so we end up finding out that Penelope is Lady Whistledown via this letter that Colin has opened. So like, that was still good, that was still entertaining, and I was shocked because I don't think I suspected Penelope at any point. There were a lot of curveballs. I thought at one point that it would have been Eloise. I thought if it had been an actual Bridgerton, that would have been exciting. But Penelope is like the next best exciting reveal. So yeah, that was all fine and well. And I didn't know if it would actually be revealed in this whole book, because Colin, it's weird his reaction, because he is angry at first and then he proposes to her. The men of this story, it's very hard to predict them, because in one minute they'll be so angry with the love interest, and then the next minute they're proposing marriage. It gives me whiplash, but it was so sweet as well because Penelope falls out of the carriage. Very funny. But it also leads to a really great moment with Colin and Mrs. Featherington, where he's like, you need to start respecting Penelope more. And it seemed like for the very first time that Mrs. Featherington was proud of her daughter. You know, I wish she had have realised her daughter's own self-worth before this, but we've got to take the wins as they come, haven't we? We've got to take the wins as they come. So yeah, that was all sweet. But we actually do get the whole big Lady Whistledown reveal at the end. And it totally, again, did not go the way I expected it. I thought there was going to be proper fallout. I thought it was going to be carnage. I thought it was going to be World War III. But no, that's not what happened. Instead, Colin, he tells Penelope that he supports her and he gets the other Bridgertons to help. But at this, it was like a musical or a ball or some other kind of party that they were throwing. Colin makes a speech in front of everyone, and then he says how proud he is of Penelope and all of that. He says she is the wittiest person in London and that she is Lady Whistledown. And like, that was like, everyone's silent. Alright, everyone's silent, everyone's shocked, right? And then Lady Danbury starts clapping. And then everyone starts clapping. I was like, okay, this was not the reaction I expected at all. Would I have preferred, like, carnage? Like, what would they have done? If it wasn't that, what would they have done? Would they have ran after Penelope and started chasing her through the streets like an angry mob? Lady Whistledown has been this huge part of this society for like a long time, and she's been revealing secrets and talking shit about people essentially, and everyone's applauding. I feel like maybe they're applauding because she gave them the much needed excitement in their lives that they had to get from her, because this high society malarkey sounds very boring to me. But to have someone like Lady Whistledown stir the pot, like, I would also be very appreciative of that. But it's still strange. It's still strange, the reaction of everyone. And it'll be interesting to see if this carries over into book 5. I don't know chronologically what the whole malarkey is. But I think we might get more of that. I mean, it'll be sad now that we won't get Lady Whistledown kind of segments at the start of chapters and things. I'll miss them. I'll miss the whole drama that Lady Whistledown brought, honestly. Like, now I'm wondering, like, what is going to stir the pot? Because, I'm not going to lie, I'm not really that excited by the romances. I've been really hanging on to the Lady Whistledown aspects of these books. So, without Lady Whistledown, it's going to be sad. But other than that, I thought this was really solid. I'll probably just give it 3.5 stars because I didn't like it as much as book 2, but it was definitely better than book 1 and book 3. So now we finished the 4th book. We're halfway through. We are halfway through, lads. We've got this. I am really appreciating the fact that each Bridgerton romance has felt quite different to the next. Even though, like, these books are not blowing me away by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. But I am still enjoying myself, and again, I am surprised that we had a little bit of a different angle in this one as well. So I was a little bit concerned after reading the first two, even though I loved the second book. I mean, love is a huge word, I guess, but yeah, so far it is my favourite still. But yeah, I was worried that the romances would pretty much be a copy and paste of each other, especially since the people are different and the characters are feeling quite different, but just in terms of how the romance would play out and the way that they would, like, kind of be forced to marry in a way. Like, the first two were pretty much a forced marriage because they got caught in compromising positions. So I thought maybe that kind of theme would carry over into the rest of the series, but fortunately that's not the case. I feel like with book 5, To Sir Philip with Love, we had a different kind of romance again, and it's nice to see that. It's nice to see the variation between the romances. And in this one we follow Eloise, like this is Eloise's story, and also Philip. Like we did with a few other of the main characters, or at least like the male love interests, we have a little bit of backstory beforehand, and honestly my heart really goes out to Philip. I felt so bad for him. So his brother had died, and his brother's fiance ended up becoming his wife, and his wife ends up, after having twins, I feel like she went into postpartum depression and she ends up committing suicide, or at least like she attempts to, and then he saves her, but because she tried to drown herself, but from that suicide attempt she caught a chill and she ends up dying from complications of that. So yeah, that was like really hard and heavy, especially for a Bridgerton novel. There have been some tough moments, there have been some tough conversations, but I feel like having a widow in the form of Philip, the love interest, I thought was like really nicely explored, and it was done in such an emotional way that really gave more gravitas to the characters of the 5th Bridgerton book. And I do really like Eloise. I love the fact that she has this friendship still with Penelope, even though Penelope has been revealed as Lady Whistledown. And the one thing that I was really scared about this book was that we wouldn't have any Lady Whistledown parts of it. You know, like at the start of each chapter there would be a segment from a Lady Whistledown column. But yeah, in this one it's actually Eloise. She is writing letters to various loved ones, and I like that touch of it actually. I do miss Lady Whistledown's gossip, but I really did appreciate the touches of flair to the Eloise character in developing her a little bit more in these tiny kind of segments from letters. And I do have a love-hate relationship with epistolary formats, but I feel like having those little sound bites were just like really good. Like it was a really nice touch to Eloise's character. The romance was good. I liked it. It involved Eloise and Philip writing letters to one another because Philip's wife is a cousin to Eloise. So they end up getting in touch and they end up falling in love through these letters, and Philip ends up asking Eloise to marry him and she says yes. She goes to live with him and she is a really good kind of mother figure to his twins. And it was nice to see the kind of like surrogate parent role in this too, which I feel like, again, for this being like a trashy romance kind of series, it was nice to have those really humanizing moments where I feel like sometimes these characters can come across as these romantic caricatures, but they feel quite real. Like, I feel like one of the best things about the Bridgerton series is just how real these historical people feel and how relatable they can be as well, and how they can reflect today's society and all of that. So I really enjoyed that. And it's nice to see the juxtaposition between Eloise and Philip. They come from totally different kinds of families. So Phillip is, you know, pretty much alone his entire life, and Eloise has a big family. So to have that juxtaposition, to have the kind of moments where they sort of clash because of their different upbringings, it was quite refreshing. It was nice to have, and I don't recall any moment where Phillip really aggravated me like the love interests of the previous books, because a lot of the times they would just do something that would get under my skin and annoy me, and they would have the shortest of tempers. And I feel like Phillip does have his moments, but not in a way that was really annoying or grating, and whenever he did, it felt natural to his character. I have heard that this is like a kind of a little bit of a Beauty and the Beast sort of thing, and I can kind of say that. And what I like more about it than the third book, which was essentially just a Cinderella retelling, is that it's a lot more subtle in this. Like any kind of comparison you can make to Beauty and the Beast, it's very subtle and it does feel genuine to the characters. So like say for instance Phillip, sometimes he will become despondent and he will feel like he has become a different character, when in actuality it just all informs the grief that he's going through and his own personal development. In terms of like steaminess and stuff, I don't really find the Bridgerton books that steamy. There are moments of passion, in hot passion, but like say in this one it didn't feel as passionate, I guess, as other books. And other times the sex or like the need for sex would come from Phillip trying to smooth things over with Eloise because he's went maybe into a little bit of a mood swing and he's like trying to apologize and things like that. So there were kind of moments like that, but there wasn't anything outwardly sexual in a way or anything that really got me all hot and bothered. I don't know if I'm just desensitized to it all now, but it felt a little bit toned back in the terms of steamy romance or like the passion. And I think Eloise might be probably my favourite Bridgerton child, because she is very funny, she's very bubbly, she's eccentric. She reminded me of Daphne in the first half of The Duke and I. Unfortunately, Eloise decides to be the absolute goat for the entire book, you know? Like, she doesn't really change her character. She does have a little bit of growth, but she doesn't ever forget who she is or her family and where she's come from. She feels genuine throughout. And I believe actually Eloise is the first character we've seen from the Bridgerton family like really take on the parenting role. I know we do have like the epilogues and things in like Daphne's story for instance, but it's nice to see Eloise really take in that motherly role, especially since, you know, Violet is still a presence and she is someone who has inspired and touched each of the Bridgerton children. Her influence is felt so much in their actions and what they do. And we do still get like the tiniest of epilogues in this. And when I finished it and I just read what she named her daughter, like Eloise, who she named her after, it was so touching, especially since, well, she calls her daughter Penelope, and she is pretty much writing a letter to her daughter who is just being born, and this is like a letter for her to read when she's a bit older, kind of like imparting some life lessons. And she named her daughter Penelope, and I love the friendship between Penelope and Eloise from all the previous books and things. It's nice to see them still be so strong. And yeah, like it's just so sweet. It's such a sweet moment that she did that. I still think The Viscount Who Loved Me is my favourite Bridgerton book. And I think this is probably on par with book 4 in a way. I maybe prefer book 4 a little bit more. Potentially, I do prefer it more than The Duke and I might give this one 3.5 stars as well. So it's like the same rating as the previous book. I think I might prefer the previous book just a little bit more, but I don't want to be like, this is 3.25, you know, I don't want to be doing that. I don't think this is quite a 3, I think it's just a bit better than a 3. I just can't explain my thoughts. I can't explain my thoughts. I'm so tired, but, you know, I'm still soldiering on, I'm still getting there. I've only got 3 books now to go, and I'm looking forward to finishing the series. And I'm pleasantly surprised by some of them. It has been a bit of a roller coaster. There have been times where I've been like, oh no, this is not great. And other times where I've been like, okay, this is actually like really worth reading. So yeah, please ignore my ramblings and just vibe. Let me know in the comments your favourite Bridgerton books as well, if you've gotten to this point. Let me know your favourite Bridgerton book. I still have 3 more to go, and I wonder if any of them will become my new favourite or not. But, you know, I'm just enjoying the ride, so hopefully you're enjoying the ride of this vlog. And I hope you will not think me foolish when I also extend my thanks. Thank you, Michael, for letting my son love her first. Oh man. I don't know what it is, but I feel like Julia Quinn's become a better writer as the books have gone on. Oh, that was so heartbreaking. my cats have now decided to play with their toys. This entire time they've been quiet, and I click record, all emotional, and they decide to play with their toys. Perfect. So this was actually another really good book, and I genuinely didn't think I would enjoy half of these books, but they turn out so good. The themes and what Julia Quinn explores in this book, again, are just so heavy hitting and so relevant to today as well, especially in terms of relationships and love. And oh, this really tugged at my bloody heartstrings. Probably the most emotional book that I've read so far, and I'm sure I said that about the previous book. But no, this was so good. So this one follows Francesca, and she marries a man called John, and John's cousin Michael is in love with Francesca. And I honestly thought that we would have a different story than what we got. I thought there might be some cheating involved. I thought there would be like some unrequited love, but they would do something that I would frown on. But no, it's, oh, I feel like these were probably like some of the best character dynamics I've read in the Bridgerton series so far. Francesca marries John, and they're in love, and Michael is like, oh god, I love her so much, but I love how happy my friends are. And they are like a sort of unit. They're like the three musketeers, Francesca, John, and Michael. Michael is just so nice and so, like he puts the feelings of others first, essentially, and he just internally agonizes over the fact that he could never have Francesca. And then one day John dies in his sleep, and it just tears them apart. Like, it tears them both apart. The grief that it explores is so touching, especially with how Francesca pleads with Michael when she tries to wake John up, and she pleads with Michael, please wake him up, do this for me. And it was like, oh, like obviously you can't do that because he's dead. He is dead. And trigger warnings for miscarriage as well, but Francesca is pregnant, but she loses the baby. And that means Michael will definitely be ill. And it's like a huge deal, of course, but Michael doesn't want it because he loved his cousin so, so much that he never wants to replace him in terms of both the earldom and his love for Francesca. So like now, there is this opportunity where they could potentially get together, but he doesn't want to, and neither does Francesca. She doesn't realise that she loves Michael yet. But Michael says that they say this is why I'm a little bit torn on Michael, because like I totally understand where he's coming from, and he does run away for 4 years to India, but like Francesca like needs him, and like she does try and like use his shoulder to lean on, kind of thing. There are two sides to this story in all honesty, and they both raise good points, especially when they reunite. And yeah, it's a tricky relationship, but I think it was explored so well, and it's one of the reasons why I think Julia Quinn has become a better writer as the books have gone on. And I'm holding this upside down. There we go. So yeah, Michael does run away because he doesn't want the earldom. He just wants his cousin back. And oh, the amount of times I had like a heavy mouth, you know, when the roof of your mouth becomes heavy when you get emotional, like at the end of that bloody epilogue, like that's how I felt reading about Michael and not wanting to be part of the earldom because he doesn't want to replace his cousin. It's just like such a touching thing for him to say. The exploration of like the fact that he does love Francesca and he's loved her forever. He's loved her for a long time. And he just can't touch her. He can't do anything with her because that guilt is overpowering him. And it's just so sensitive to that. I don't think I've ever read a romance where it's been as sensitive as it was in this book, where one of the, like, I guess the love triangle dies and then he leaves the other two behind. Like, what do they do? So it feels very genuine. It feels very sensitive to the original husband, who still felt like a character. Like, I grieved as well when he died. Like, he felt like a character, just like all the characters in this feel like genuine characters. And sometimes I do find it hard to relate to characters from hundreds of years ago, for instance, but I totally did, and it just hit that much harder when we have these really tough conversations between Francesca and Michael a bit later on, when they are falling in love, and yeah, the kind of breaking that barrier between them where this grief has just put this wall around them because they've both changed. Michael's changed, Francesca's changed. You know, Francesca's more internal. She is a lot more tortured inward and she's not as carefree as she used to be. And Michael is just consumed with guilt and yeah, it's just like eating him alive. So to see them finally start to break down that wall, it was like so healing for me as a reader as well to see a healthy relationship established from that, where she was married to someone else and that person was Michael's cousin, but to see that natural growth, the natural sort of way that this guild has kind of started to crumble down around them to allow them to move on, to allow them to love again. Oh god, it was just so beautiful. When they do finally reunite after 4 years, Michael is very standoffish at first, but I see it, I mean, all the guys in Bridgerton series do have moments where they are standoffish. But, you know, when you see that his heart is so guarded, like he has this iron wall around him, then you can kind of see why he tries to push Francesca away, to avoid temptation, to stop them from falling in love. Like, that's the kind of thing that I think explains his behaviour, and I don't mind it when there's a genuine and honest, raw explanation for being a little bit of a dick every now and then. But their love is gradual, and they do have some steamy scenes later on when they realise just like how much they can make each other happy, and they don't need that memory or that ghost of John to hold them back. And yeah, it was a lot steamier than the previous book, for instance, in my opinion. But it still didn't quite scratch my steamy itch, you know. But, you know, it was Francesca's first ever orgasm, so, you know, props for that. I'm proud of her. I'm very proud of her. It was that first kiss between them that really, changed the trajectory of this novel. Like, there was a lot of angst, and sometimes I don't like angst, especially because usually the angst I read is from young adult books, and they don't really like mean anything to me. I don't enjoy them. But when it's like two adults and they have this huge grey cloud above them, and to see that angst come to a head with their first kiss was so magnetic and raw. God, I loved it. There was a little bit of a dramatic moment where I knew Michael would be fine, but he does have moments of malaria, and like the fever comes back every now and then, but there is like this worst case of like fever that comes and gets him towards the end of the novel, and it looks like Francesca might like lose another husband. It was like so heartbreaking when she gives her like kind of internal monologue about how some women go their whole lifetimes with one husband and she can't even have two. Like, it's like she can't even hold on to anyone, and like that kind of raw emotion, it hits so heavy. And I feel like Francesca has been the most real heroine in the Bridgerton series so far, in terms of putting her heart on her sleeve, what she goes through. And I probably said that about every Bridgerton heroine so far. But like, yeah, we seem to be getting better and better with the portrayals of either the heroes or the heroines of Bridgerton. So when everything is finally all well and good, and they profess their love for one another and everything's good, oh, I was just so happy. I was like, yes, finally, this is like when it felt like a journey. It felt like a journey. And then to be hit in the face with that bloody epilogue, honestly, I mean, it was a great epilogue. It's a letter from John's mother, the first husband. Oh, God, just thinking about it, like, makes me tear up now. When you consider the parents of a lost loved one and you're moving on with someone else, I can imagine how guilty you must feel for that. But at the same time, you can't really do anything but live. And to see Francesca live and be happy, and to see John's mother bless their marriage and bless her moving on. Oh, like, that's the kind of thing that rips your heart out, but it's the thing that people need the most when grieving a lost loved one and wanting to move on. It's like, it was like the cherry on top of a really fantastic book, in all honesty. I'm going to give this one a 4-star. I don't think I can ever give a Bridgerton book 5-star, just because, again, it's not really my 100% thing. But I do think this is probably my joint favourite with the Viscount Who Loved Me. I think both of the books are so good. And yeah, 4.5. It felt so honest, and I feel like, oh, now my cats are fighting. Now it feels like you will take something different from each Bridgerton book, depending on how you have life experience, or like what you want to put onto the book yourself and what you've experienced. And I feel like this one just, it was just really, really good. But yeah, who knew? Who knew the series would get better? I genuinely thought it would go downhill after the second book, which was a bad mindset to have, but I'm honestly just so pleasantly surprised. I risked the rain to get a coffee from Costa, well, one of the Costa machines in Tesco, and I got there it was raining, and I looked like a drowned fucking rat. And the machine isn't bringing out coffee, it's only doing hot chocolate. I mean, I didn't want to leave empty-handed, so I got the hot chocolate, but didn't get my coffee. Bloody livid. And it feels like a good reflection because I wasn't the biggest fan of book number 7. It's in his case. That's where it is. And because of the title of this, there's this whole thing about missing jewels in this. It's a bit like an Indiana Jones kind of thing where they're looking for some hidden jewels. And I thought that they would be hidden in his kiss. And that's why we had the title, It's in His Kiss. That's where it is. I thought maybe that was the jewel. But I guess that's more metaphorical than the physical jewels that they are looking for. And it was really funny actually because at the end, in the epilogue, the two main characters in this one, the romantic pairing, they have a daughter and she ends up finding the jewels after years and years and years of searching in a crack in the nursery wall. But then the daughter puts it back as Hyacinth is calling up for her daughter, just leaving the jewels in there for a bit longer. So I don't know if they actually end up finding them unless it's mentioned in book 8. But I found that a little funny. And this was a pretty fun book in all honesty. Like not as... Like, I feel like because it came off the heels of When He Was Wicked, that I didn't fully love this one. And there are a few reasons. So in this one we do follow Hyacinth. She is the youngest Bridgerton and she spends a lot of time with Mrs. Danbury, and I love Mrs. Danbury. I love her wit. I love how sometimes she can be a little bit crass, and she has a really good relationship with Hyacinth. So we see a lot more of Lady Di in this book, which is great. I do love that dynamic. And Gareth is Lady Di's grandson. And Gareth has some daddy issues. Like, let's be honest, I feel like every single Bridgerton man in the series has daddy issues. So there's nothing really new there. And I felt like a lot of the romance, a lot of the stuff that happens in this wasn't really new. Other than the whole cat burglar, jewel finding storyline that we have in this. So that was a little bit random. But all in all, like it's hard to explain the plot of this book because it felt a lot more to do with Gareth and finding out the identity of his real dad, because his current dad, the one who he thought was his dad, tells him that he's a bastard, so he's not really his. But then it turns out that he is still related, so that he is an heir in the family line. So like all of that was really not a big deal, I guess. I mean, it would be for Gareth because, you know, if you grow up thinking someone's your dad and then it turns out they're not, that is a huge thing. And it is a heavy storyline as well, but like not as, I guess, impactfully explored like in the previous book with the death of a loved one and moving on from that. So there were some like big shoes to fill after book 6, but yeah, it was fine, honestly, it was fine. There was something that Gareth did, though, about halfway through the book that made me not really like him that much as a character. So he hasn't told Hyacinth that he's a bastard, and he's worried that she will leave him. So he thinks that if he has sex with Hyacinth, then she will have no option but to marry him. And even though there is consent with the sex and they are into it, like, he is going in with, like, malicious intent, if you know what I mean. His heart is in the right place a lot of the time because he does love her and he doesn't want her to leave him if she finds out that he's a bastard. But it's not any better, you know, doing that and giving her no option but to stay with you after the encounter. So even though she's, like, all okay with it by the end, I still found that act to be rather unforgivable and, like, really... It put him in a new light. Like, I was enjoying Gareth to a certain extent up to that point. And when I say enjoy, I mean, like, he was likeable. He wasn't really a standout hero in the Bridgerton world, but he was absolutely fine. He was, you know, he is what he is. There are some swoon-worthy moments between Hyacinth and Gareth. I prefer other couples. In all honesty, I do. This one still kept the Julia Quinn humour and the likeable main characters. It was serviceable. It was a serviceable book. So I'm probably going to give this one 3 stars again. Like, it's like middle of the road for me. It didn't blow me away, but it wasn't bad. And yeah, I just think I just love book 6 too much that anything after that would be a disappointment. It's the same with like book 2, when book 3 was just like really not my bag, baby. And I feel like some of that was because it came off the heels of book 2. Even though I still stand by my opinion on book 3, it wasn't really that great. But yeah, I'm trying not to hold it against this book that it had to follow a really good book. It is what it is. It's fine, honestly. And I honestly have not very many feelings or opinions on this one. So this one's just a short review on It's in His Case. Love the title though, because I cannot stop singing the Cher song in my head. I love a happy ending. And as much as I have disliked some Bridgerton books, I haven't fully enjoyed my time reading the Bridgerton series. Although I will say the positives definitely outweigh the negatives. It's so nice to come to the conclusion of the final book and kind of be left with this feeling of completion, you know, like all of the Bridgerton siblings are now happy, they're married, they've had children, and there's a part of me that like takes some great comfort out of that. And I'm a sucker for the Bridgerton book series, what can I say? This book, On the Way to the Wedding, the final book in the Bridgerton series, did get to a point where I felt it was a bit slow and I thought it was getting overtly long, and I feel like this could have been condensed in all honesty. But by the end of it, I was enjoying my time again, and I was just happy for the series to be over. So in this one, we do follow Gregory, and he loves, or he's like fallen in love with Hermione Watson. However, Hermione Watson isn't really paying attention to many people. She doesn't really seem that interested in Gregory. So Gregory thinks that the way to get to Hermione's heart is if he befriends Hermione's best friend, Lucy or Lucinda. And Lucy loves Gregory. She does end up falling for him, but she is betrothed to someone else. She's been forced to marry him because her uncle is blackmailing her. Honestly, there's a whole story there. Her uncle is blackmailing her so that if she doesn't marry the person that she is betrothed to, then it could destroy her family's reputation and her place in society. So Lucy falls for Gregory, and then Gregory does finally fall for Lucy, but it seems like it might be too late. You know, she is betrothed and she has to marry this guy. So that's like the main part of this story, and it was honestly fine. It was good. There wasn't really a lot of steaminess because of the whole subject matter of the plot. The couple, they weren't really head over heels in love with one another for a good chunk of this book, and even then they couldn't really do much. And they do some things towards or near the end, and especially before the bloody wedding as well. But I digress. There is like this whole drama, and it's probably the most dramatic since book 4 when Lady Whistledown was revealed. And so I really enjoyed that. It made it a lot more exciting, despite the book being around 50 to 100 pages too long for me. Fortunately, the characters I think were so well done again. They didn't really aggravate me all that much. I will say that Lucy, she did flip, and I did get some kind of aggravation from her by the end of it. I was like, it turned out okay though. It did turn out okay. The dramatic thing that happened though that I really enjoyed was the fact that Gregory crashes Lucy's wedding and pretty much tells them to stop. He tries to stop the wedding. Lucy still goes through with the wedding though, because again she is being blackmailed into it, but it made for this really dramatic scene. It was so good, and it just meant that Gregory and Lucy had to work even harder to, you know, get together by the end of it, because I genuinely thought when he crashed the wedding that would be the end of it, but no, there's like still a good chunk of it after that we have to get through. And then there's a bit of a kidnapping, there are guns involved, but it does turn out that the uncle is a traitor himself, and things do get worked out by the end. Lucy and Gregory end up getting married, and it's happy ever after for them. As you can tell, the books that I didn't really overtly care too much for, I don't have a whole lot to say about, but the ones that I genuinely loved, I feel like I had way more to talk about. This one, I don't think I have much to say about it. I feel like I'd end up repeating myself over and over and over again if I just told you exactly what I thought about the characters and the relationship and the romance and how they got together and the dance. They had a dance which was really nice and magical, but again, like, it's things that I feel like I've already seen before in the series. So with this book coming last and 8th in the series, I'm seeing a lot of patterns. I'm seeing a lot of things that were kind of Frankensteined from other books in the Bridgerton series, and it did make for a really good fun book, and some of it was exciting, but yeah, I was just ready for it to be over by this point, and I'm glad it is. So for this book, I'm going to give it 2.5, definitely in the middle, and definitely not the worst, but it was very middling for me and not exactly memorable, or at least not as memorable as other ones. Just a couple of standout moments, such as crashing the wedding. Like, that one was such a good moment, but that really was the best moment in the book probably for me, and that's about it, and it was good. That's all I can really say about it. So yeah, I feel a little bit not disappointed, because it ended happily still. We all got our happy endings for all of the Bridgerton siblings. So now I will rank the Bridgerton books from worst to best, I think. I've forgotten what I've given each of the books in all honesty, but I have them laid out in how I've rated them. So I probably won't tell you the specific ratings I gave each book, but I will tell you my least favourite to favourite. So my least favourite book in the Bridgerton series is An Offer from a Gentleman. If you want my thoughts on any of these books, I do have timestamps down below for each section. I don't want to repeat all of my thoughts on these books, but yeah, definitely the worst one in my opinion. And then coming in at 7th place, the first book, The Duke and I. And then in 6th place is the 8th and final book, which is On the Way to the Wedding. In 5th place is the 7th book, which is It's in His Kiss. In 4th place is the... goddamn cats, is To Sir Philip with Love. In 3rd place, it is the 4th book, which is Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. In 2nd place, it is the 6th book, which is When He Was Wicked, which leaves in 1st place the 2nd book in the series, The Viscount Who Loved Me. Really, really enjoyed this book, but it was a close call between 1st and 2nd place. I gave both these 4 stars, and I really do think these are the standouts in the Bridgerton series. And I will say though that my top 4 I think are so fantastically solid. Like, I really did enjoy these 4 specifically. And then the bottom 4 went from just being fine to, in my opinion, god awful. So there we have it. That was me reading all of the 8 books in the Bridgerton series by Juliet Quinn. I really hope you enjoyed it. I really appreciate you watching. Don't forget to leave this video a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave all your comments down below. Let me know your thoughts on the Bridgerton series. Let me know your favourite book, least favourite book, favourite character, everything. I want to know everything down in the comments below. A huge thank you to my patrons for supporting my channel. If you'd like to join my Patreon or follow me on any social media, then all the links are down in the description box. But yeah, I hope I will see you in the next video. Bye.